We were just going to shoot over to Sierra Leone, jump in, and shoot, shoot, shoot. We were just running off of pure like emotions to make this movie work. And I had talked to an experienced documentarian who's our mentor on the project, and he was like, "Nah, bro, you got to slow down. You got to go over there. You got to prep. You got to go over there." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You have to approach this like you're approaching a feature film."
You are listening to Talk Doc to Me, a podcast dedicated to helping documentary filmmakers thrive. I'm your host and fellow filmmaker, Leah Leone, and today's guests are Ebony Gilbert and Adisa Septuri, co-directors of Ifine, a short documentary that captures the beauty of blackness through the lens of youth in the Kono district of Sierra Leone amid a skin-bleaching epidemic. Ebony is a writer, producer, director, and activist. She worked as a writer on CW's Batwoman for 3 seasons, and the show made history for having the first Black Batwoman. She is also CEO of Dirt Stained Roses, a multi-platform media company committed to innovation, visibility, and social justice. Ebony is a changemaker and talented storyteller who is uplifting marginalized voices. Now, Adisa is a director, producer, and philanthropist. He was specially selected to participate in Ava DuVernay's 2021 masterclass. His deeply personal humanitarian approach to filmmaking has not only garnered him philanthropic recognition, but also numerous awards across film festivals. His work in the Sierra Leone region extends back over a decade, and together they make an amazing duo to deliver their first documentary, their Oscar-qualifying film, Ifine. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us, Leah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, I'd like to start with some words of affirmation because I met you two at the Santa Barbara Film Festival when the film premiered. And it was just so memorable. I watched it again this morning, and it's really eye-opening. It's raw. It's real. It's a tearjerker. It really hits your heart. So I'm very excited to chat with you both about it. And let's start with Adisa. So can you explain your relationship to the community with the film? When did that begin for you?
I've started going over to Sierra Leone, 2006. I first went over there with Isaiah Washington. I went there 2 years later with Regina King. So I just fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the country, but I had an innate connection with the people, and I had a faith that I could do something. And then my having survived that hantavirus scare really infueled like a new passion for myself. And so then what we first started doing was taking the kids out of the diamond mines. We did soccer tournaments. We inspired them through education. So I would raise money and we would put kids in school. And we're still doing that to this day. I mean, we've been doing it for like 16 years. So it's still going strong. And it's been, I wouldn't say I don't know if it's a legacy for me as much as, yeah, I do want to say that actually. I want to say that it's a proud legacy that I'm embarking on because it makes me feel good. I'm making a contribution. And if I had to check out of here, whenever I check out of here, the fact that I've touched so many lives or made a difference in so many, and they've made a difference in my life too. So it goes both ways. But that's fulfillment in itself.
Yeah. And when did the idea for the documentary first come about? And how did Ebony come on board?
So that was almost that's so serendipitous. So we weren't going to do, I hadn't even thought about a doc in Sierra Leone. Like that was not on the agenda. Ebony was writing for television. She was writing her own personal scripts. I was writing my own personal scripts. I was doing narrative filmmaking. And so, but there was one incident, and I had called over to talk to one of my coaches, and he said that one of my players was trying to get in touch with me. When the player was on the team, she was 13 years old. It's flash forward 5 years now. She's 18. And he had sent me over a picture. He said, Bundu. And I was trying to think, who's Bundu? You know, so many kids. So I was like, well, who's Bundu? Then he sent me a photo of her. And the photo was unrecognizable. Like I could not imagine her going from 13 to 18. I could imagine her going from 13 to 18, of course. But the fact that her complexion was like the complexion of Ebony's just startled me. And I was in disbelief. And I said, that is not Bundu. That is not Bundu. And he kept saying, yeah, that is Bundu. That is Bundu. I said, no, that's not Bundu. That went on for because I had to reconcile the fact that somebody could go from that complexion to a very light, it was just, I couldn't wrap my head around it. I just couldn't. And But then I ended up going over there and I saw it for myself. And then I was wrestling with the idea of how tragic this was, that now we had to sort of, after, as African people, people of African descent, now buy into these notions of beauty, which weren't our own reflection of beauty, which were
Yeah.
somebody else's. And it just disturbed me.
Did you know about skin bleaching before,
I
or
knew
was
about it. Yeah,
yeah.
I had heard about it in Nigeria, but it was always this thing where, somebody, it's like now that I know about it, I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
But at the time, I heard about it in Nigeria. I even saw a billboard in Nigeria, and I thought how ridiculous that was. But it was like it didn't touch home. It didn't touch my family. It wasn't in close proximity to me.
And for those people that might not know about skin bleaching, can you describe what it is?
Yeah, well, skin bleaching is a process where, and you can do it a number of different ways, but it's a number of ways. It actually, it is just like it sounds. You're bleaching your skin to look lighter. So if you're, you know, really, I don't, if you're a really brown, rich chocolate brown person, you can come out looking like your complexion through a process of putting on lotions and oils. They have baths now that you can bleach. I mean, there's different processes, but the one we found most common in Sierra Leone was the lotion. And yeah, so you'd apply the lotion, and over time, it would just dissipate the melanin in your skin. Like you wouldn't have any melanin, and you'd just be super light.
And this is a huge industry. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
some stats at the end of the film were quite scary.
Yeah.
yeah, and we didn't know anything about, when we went, and I'll let Ebony chime in, but when we went into this doc, we didn't know any of that at the time. I
No.
mean, it was just really, this is impacting me. I'm hurt by it. I shared the idea with Ebony. Ebony was hurt by it. She was affected by it, and it was like, let's come together and
Yeah.
make a poignant documentary that was going to say something about this.
So Ebony, what made you come on board? Tell me about those initial conversations.
I remember it like it was yesterday. I was home. I was outside in Adisa, said Ebony. Just the same story that he just shared with you guys. You would not believe what is going on back home. And keep in mind, like Adisi, he told you about his history there, but he's not an outsider. This is his community. He has been adopted by this community. They love him, they adore him, and he feels the very same way about the children there. And I just heard the heartbreak in his voice. And when he told me about the topic, I was like, this is a project that is bigger than us. It wasn't like either one of us was like seeking out the next big thing for our resumes. However, we both share the common interest in how can we use our art to say something? And this is really saying something. So without hesitation, I think I interrupted him. I was like, can I be a part of this? I would love to be a part of this. When can we start? And immediately we started to research. And like he said, we knew about the concepts. We know about it. Like skin bleaching is something that have had history all over the globe. And especially for me being a person from the South. But it wasn't until we got into this documentary that we started to do a deep, and I would say dark dive into the stats, and knowing that, like you said, it's a $14 billion industry and it's growing every day.
Hmm. It is heartbreaking. It is. But that's it's just that feeling, right? You get that feeling like I have to do this. Like I don't know how or what. I don't know where I'll get the money, or I don't know all the details, but I'm just gonna make this film because that's it spoke to you.
And
Um,
part of the conversation for me and Ebony too was we knew she was stressed, and she would always stress this. We didn't want to do a journalistic approach. Like you can go to YouTube and see a journalistic kind of interview style thing. That's not what we were going to do. So even though we had not done documentaries, we don't have both. Neither one of us have a background in documentary. We knew enough to say has to be a story. We have to unfold it. And so then we knew from the onstart we didn't just want to approach it in terms of characters and documentary. We also wanted to heighten the awareness, like how can we swing around to Black beauty? Like we had to, I know Ebony was, and she's, because she comes from a writing background, it's like we have to find a protagonist in here who loves her beauty. You know what I mean? That has to be, like, we just can't be one-sided with it.
Yeah.
And then Ebony, and I'll let her talk about it too, how she, and maybe you want to talk about it later in terms of introducing the choreo poem, but that's what that was supposed to offset some of the disturbing images in the film.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Ebony, that you come from a writing background. I'm very curious to hear your perspective, especially coming from a narrative side. You write narrative scripts.
Yeah.
How did you approach writing in documentary? What was your thought process when
Well,
you first began?
when I first began, I always been a fan of documentaries. I probably watch more documentaries than I do scripted television or movies. I'm just a fan, and I started in journalism at 16. When I was in high school, I had a column in the Miami Herald, so I really always loved the idea of really telling real people's stories. So that was just a passion of mine, but I had never had the opportunity to explore it just yet. Um, so when this opportunity came around, it was scary because I had never done it before, but I had Adisa alongside me, and he is a very accomplished and talented filmmaker. And at the end of the day, I think if you're a storyteller and you have an important story to tell, you will be able to put together something that's impactful. And we had both of those ingredients. And as far as our approach for this film, one thing we knew immediately, and this is something that we discussed, is that we didn't want to feel very journalistic, as Adisa said. We knew that we didn't want to interview historians, scholars, people from the outside looking in. We wanted this story to be told from the mouths of those who were experiencing it. So, from our research, this is the only documentary where young people tell their own stories coming of age amid an epidemic. So, that was really intentional for us on that side of it. But as far as the narrative side, we really wanted to incorporate what has been coined a choreo poem. So for me, my hero is Zora Neale Hurston. And I always love how she really utilized so many different styles to tell a story, whether it was a play, a short story, a poem, a novel. So that was something that was always a part of my passion to do that, in the intersectionality of such things. So with this, I was like, wow, it would be really cool if we could have a narrative approach that's just not only aesthetically pleasing, but that will really amplify our metaphor. So that's when we came up with the story of a young woman who was going through this journey of being her natural, beautiful self, being lost, and then reuniting with her ancestors to be remembered for who she is. So that was some of the thinking behind it.
I could. It's interesting just to piggyback on what she said. I could share this because I think your audience may get something from this. So we won. I think in a lot of ways we won. We were successful in terms of shooting it, prepping it, getting it out there. That's a victory in itself. And then now we finished it, gone through post. It's a victory. But there was some. I'm not going to say there were missteps, but maybe the audience can glean something from this. We were going to just dive right in. It was like we were prepping and we were just going to shoot over to Sierra Leone, jump in and shoot, shoot, shoot. We didn't have any cast. We were gonna get there, find the cast. We were gonna get there and find the locations. We were just running off of pure like emotions to make this
Right.
movie work.
Mm-hmm.
And I had talked to an experienced documentarian who's our mentor on the project, Mobilaji, who did a film called Ferguson Rises, and he was like, "Nah, bro, you got to slow down. You got to go over there. You got to prep." You got to go over there. I said, what do you mean? He said, you have to approach this like you're approaching a feature film. Like I'm a narrative director. So he says, you have to approach it just like that. You got to go over there. You got to cast it, find the cast, find the right cast, location scout, do all that stuff, take photos and blah, 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 blah. I said, really? He said, yeah, no, you can't just land. But I knew when he said it, it made sense. I didn't argue it because I think part of maybe my winning formula in terms of my makeup is that when I hear the truth, I don't have to be like convinced. Like I knew it was the truth. I shared it with Ebony, and Ebony was like, "Wait a minute now," because it was the truth. But Ebony also had a time frame to shoot it. Like she's working in TV, and there was some real framework around. I have to do it now. This is the time. And I said, Ebony, we're gonna have to push it. And she was like, well, I can't push the TV thing, so we got to do it now. This is my window. So she was excited, but this was the window. And I said, but that window for us is going to be failure because we hadn't prepped it. I hadn't gone over there. We hadn't scouted it. If we had shot it the way we intended first off, I can tell you right now, it'd have been a calamity because you can imagine being a documentary film. We'd have got on the ground,
Well,
scrambling,
well,
no
it's
schedule.
it's interesting because I feel like my background as a documentary filmmaker, and
Mm,
anyone that is starting out, I think it is so tempting to be like, oh, grab your camera, start
right,
filming, like figure out the story later, like
right.
and it is that kind of emotional urgency
Hmm.
almost, that you just feel so motivated that you're just like, I don't care, like I just need to like go capture it. But I think your approach totally shows in the fact that everything is so intentional in the
Yeah.
film. Like there were a couple of moments, like for example, like the some rack focuses between like
Mhm. Oh yeah.
one like the mother and the
Mhm, mhm,
daughter.
mhm.
And those are, seemingly simple shots maybe, but it was so thoughtful. It was so there was
Well,
no fluff. There was no fluff in the film. And I
no, but
feel like,
let me share
yeah.
this with you. That was a on the spot kind of but what happens is when you structure it so well and you write it so well, you
Mm-hmm.
can play between the
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
The canvas is there, now you can dance.
Of
Yeah.
course.
The dance floor. So we were able to that didn't I mean it's not like and we did a lot of that on the set.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk hopefully we can talk about some of that on the call too.
Yeah.
Yeah, what kind of things did you prepare that
That
you felt really helped you on set?
well, just to like expand on what Aditya was getting to, it was so because we took the time to prep, he went over and conducted amazing pre-interviews. So with those pre-interviews, we were able to cast. And now we were able to say, okay, how could this one kid represent this particular storyline? So it's like, okay, we want to get a male approach. We want to get a young woman's approach. We want to tell a story of these best friends. We want to tell the story, of all these different type of characters. So they help us to be very intentional. So that was like one part that we did prepare for. But the storyline that you are referring to, that was the one that we always remembered that mom from our pre-interviews, and we were bummed. We were bummed about it because we were like, darn it, we only want to interview children, young kids age, and this is a mom. But our DP, Antonio, we have to give him the
No,
this.
no, she's talking about the shot with Musa.
Oh, when Moose
Musa.
with her mom.
That
Oh,
was
okay. Well, I'll go back to that.
okay.
As far as that, it was one storyline with the young girl from our opening,
Mhm.
Miriam. She's 12. She was not someone that we had pre-interviews with, but we remember her mom, and she was bleaching her 1-year-old daughter, and it was like that story is so incredibly rich. But because we had such a great framework prepared off of Adisa's point, now we felt confident, like we could spread our wings. So we already knew what type of questions to ask. And that ended up being probably one of the richest parts of the documentary for us. And that one was not planned out at all.
And on that point with the skin bleaching, we're talking about the skin bleaching baby, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was the least we didn't think that through. We thought that through on the spot
The
in the
spot.
moment. We
Yeah.
had 1 hour,
Yeah.
probably 45 minutes to shoot that whole sequence.
Yeah.
And so tribute to Ebony for Ebony was thinking quickly, putting the story together. I'm working with it. Antonio never stopped the camera.
Yeah.
To the
DP.
point where when we got to the editing room, I was like, "Where's that footage?" In the bedroom, and I couldn't find it. I could, and Ebony was like, "Well, start here." And it was like we opened that folder. It was like an hour's worth of footage because he never stopped.
Wow. Was
Because
that the approach for most of it? Like film, like
no,
really long takes? Just that
no,
one in
no,
particular?
that one in particular because what happened was the father was lurking in the background and the father was disturbing the vibe of the interview questions. Every time they would say something, they're looking to him, and so he was um he was imposing himself on it, like he was, and we had to get him out of the picture first off, and then we just focused on them, and then we didn't know what we were getting really. I mean, first we did the interview, we knew we needed to get the interview, then we took it inside, and then once we got it inside, we were like, because that storyline was something we didn't prep
We did prep that one.
because to Ebony's point, we were telling you through the lens of the children. Matter of fact, you wanted to. I mean, I don't want this to take longer than it needs to take because you'd have to start with Antonio saying, "Let's just go back to the village and get the bleaching baby."
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if your audience wants to
Full
hear
of
it. Or,
poetry. type shot because we were getting just, getting images of just the children around. So that is what got us to them in the first place. Yeah, and then we discovered, oh my gosh, she have children, teenagers, her teenage daughter, so we could interview her teenage daughter. So that opened up the world. And then, oh my gosh, you would have thought that we dressed that set to see those photos of those kids from those white women from the magazine that she was idolizing.
Right.
It took us like, oh my gosh, we could not believe it was so emotionally like overwhelming. And then our AC discovered that she has a sister who did not bleach. So the story
Right.
kept
All right there, like within an hour. The sister
opening.
was yeah, yeah.
You
And
know,
and I left there thinking, I thought we got it, but I thought it was messy. It was messy because listen, it was technical proficiency. Everybody was had their game face on, if you will, but it was messy because I was like, we have no B-roll. We didn't follow it, all the other stories. We had B-roll. We followed them around. We had complimentary footage. It was all drawn out. This one was just like there,
It
and we
was
had
just
to
so
rely.
real. It was just
it's
Ebony
like,
had to come up with the questions. Like she had to
yeah,
fire those questions quick. Like
right.
this. Then we got to decide. Then the sister came in, and then Ebony had to
You got
think
to
about.
be quick on your feet. You got to be
Oh
adaptable,
man,
right?
I,
So
yeah,
man.
Ebony, question for you. Like in this scenario, or just like when you're doing interviews, and maybe Adisa too about the pre-interviews, like what qualities, because I think casting is so interesting. And this is kind of a new concept for me too, that I'm in talking with other filmmakers, like, yeah, you can actually cast for a documentary. It
yeah.
seems kind of
Mm-hmm.
counterintuitive, but it actually makes a lot of sense. So for someone that's thinking about casting for their documentary, they know their topic, but they might have a few people that they know already. But what kind of tips do you have, or what are you looking for
Yeah,
when you're casting?
Let me
yeah,
throw this out there. I'm gonna throw this ball to Ebony, and I want her to hit it across the net. There were two girls in the village,
yeah,
twins.
yeah.
They were identically bleaching. Two twins. How special is that? Now I'm gonna throw it to Ebony because we didn't use that story.
We didn't use that story because it's almost the same thing that you would if you were creating a narrative piece. You know what I mean? When you're creating just scripted characters, they will have represented the same thing thematically that the other characters in the story are. So our approach in casting is, how are these stories different? Because you will be hitting on the same beat repeatedly. So while in our pre-interviews, when we crafted those stories, everyone got the same questions in the pre-interviews, right? For the most part, that was just our template. You know what I mean? Like, tell us about you. Why do you bleed? Why do you bleed? What does that mean? What impacts you? And things like that. And then when we were looking at the footage, we had a lot. The thing is, it's not like we were searching for children. So many people in the community were bleaching. So we had a big pool to choose from. But it was like identifying how every subject was representing a different thing, was having the same conversation, but was providing a different lens. For instance, Bintu, it was so different. It was such a fresh take on it. This is a Muslim girl, devout to her religion, you know what I mean? And she was having this moral dilemma with bleaching, you know what I mean? And staying committed to her faith. That was different. You know what I mean? But what she also represented for us is that it went beyond just being beautiful. What that meant was, if I get married, I would have access to a better life, and my family would. So that was a different POV than someone like Miriam and Musa, who had aspirations of being actresses and, being spotlight. So those were very different POVs around the same topic. So that's what we were looking for from the
Yeah. And thinking more about the questions that you're asking, because I think it's so important, Adisa, you were there, part of the community. That's why the access was there and people felt so comfortable with you. But I'm curious, like, how do you phrase certain questions to get the answers that you did? Because I felt like in your documentary in particular, everything was very like straightforward in a sense and very succinct. Like, and they were able to articulate, if I bleach my skin, then I will feel this, or it is my dream to do this. Like, how do you view script writing and documentary, and how do you
I
ask
think
the right
we
questions?
had two things, and I'll let Disa jump in, that really helped us. One, we created a safe space. think that's so important, and I think it really helped us that Adisa was already a part of the community. I had the amazing opportunity to meet the kids a year prior over the computer, just randomly, not even associated with a documentary. So they were familiar with my face and my name, and I always made promises one day I'm gonna come and see you. So that helped already. Was that we were just these far off strangers to them at the time. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was to not make them feel judged. So when we came into the talking about skin bleaching, it was very matter of fact. You know what I mean? And just to be frank, skin bleaching is not taboo in their community anyway. So it's not like it was something that they were doing under the table. So we were just very matter of fact.
Matter of fact, they probably thought they were celebrities. Like,
Yeah.
we're videotaping them, they felt good about it, which was great, it was what we wanted.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. That's an interesting dynamic. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
will so on Ebony's point, I will share this though. What made it also a unique challenge for us is that we were going in for 6 days to shoot it, and inside baseball for us is that some of those stories were like 6 hours. We only shot them for 6 hours. So for me, always leaving the story, it was like, "Do we have enough?" 'Cause we're not spending 2 days with each subject. Can you imagine if we'd spent 2 days with each person? Like, or what it would've been like 3 days? Because then you could distill that. 3 days, you could distill that down to 5 minutes. People do it all the time, but that's a lot of footage, right? There's a lot of gold in there. But when you go in for 6 hours, you have to be very specific. Like, for instance, we knew we had to have a shot list, right? Like, so we didn't construct their behavior.
Mhm. Or what
But
they
we
say.
did, but when I went over there to scout too, for instance, I saw Musu and Miriam braiding each other's hair. Oh no, I saw them braiding each other's hair. And I said, "Oh, that's a moment of intimacy." Check, Ebony. We need to have that when we go over there. We need to not recreate it as much,
Right. But you need to capture it. You saw the
but,
opportunity, and now
but
you
we're
wrote
not.
it down.
Yeah, because if we go over there in 2 days, we might not even capture it.
Right.
We have to impose our will on the subject a little bit and say, "Hey, we need this to make the story fleshed out."
But you saw it first. It's not like
Well, yeah, no, we didn't
you're
just create it out of
fabricating
nowhere.
it. You're
Right.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but
Just
I'm
like
just
what you normally do when you normally braid her hair, we'll have a conversation. So
yeah.
that's
So some of some of that construction of it, but I think that's where if you're not that skilled, you don't know exactly what you want, you can leave that scene and you could be like, "Well, we got a lot of reshooting to do," because you weren't specific enough, you weren't thoughtful enough about the footage, you weren't or you were too structured, and you get there and you don't allow yourself
to
to
be
be fluid
flexible.
because 'cause you're
Yeah.
like, "This ain't working."
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you're like, "But you know what? But it's on the list. We gotta shoot it."
That's
No,
true.
it ain't working.
It also what we
Yeah.
would do, I mean, we worked so hard. Let me tell you something. We would have interviews on location in their natural environments, but we also had to do additional interviews with them to fill in the gaps. So immediately after, I had to write notes of everything and say, okay, we need them to elaborate on these things. So then we would come in and have sit down interviews with them in the hotel where they'll elaborate on some things to give us more context. So when you would hear those voiceovers, some of that was coming from those additional interviews that we were having on the same day, but to help complement and fill in the blanks. Because like Adisa said, we were not going to leave Sierra Leone and not get everything that we needed.
In those additional interviews, that was again, we didn't plan that. We didn't think we would have them come to the hotel room after a day's shoot and say, "We need to fill in the blanks." But what happened on set, and I wasn't ready for this, I hadn't prepped, and even though I shot in Africa before, I wasn't ready for that when we shot inside their huts or in the village, I wasn't ready for all that noise. So, I knew from a sound man, because 'cause I've worked in sound for umpteen years too. That was part of my profession before I got into directing, that
Mhm.
we needed clean voiceover. And so we were shooting those interviews in the village. It was noisy. So you'd hear the kids in the background, you'd hear it honking if you were near the street. And so you can't lift that voice out of an interview and put it on voiceover because it's married to what? A lot of noise. And so that was the first thing I said when we were on set. I looked over at Ebony and I was thinking, and I know the DP he wasn't tuned into it because he's shooting, right? And Ebony's focused on the writing and the scripting and the movement of the story. But I'm thinking to myself, this is unusable in a VO. We can use it
Yep.
live.
Yep.
We see them in their environment,
So you
but
had to make the game time call to then say, okay, they need to come to our hotel later. We need to ask them more questions
we got to
Yes.
do it to
Yes.
get clean
to get
dialogue.
clean audio.
And the only one who messed up that clean audio in the hotel room was Jiminy Cricket, because he was in the back of the room in the little cricket, chirp, chirp, chirp. But I can live with him. I can
Yeah.
live with Jiminy. Can you live with Jiminy?
Yes. We did. Yeah, and
Wow.
me from my thing. Now I guess you're gathering how we work as
Yeah, I was gonna say, tell me about like the roles,
yeah,
like how what goes into a
yeah,
successful co-directing relationship, and what does that mean to you both
yeah.
in this documentary?
First of all, it means everything. It means everything. It's just bringing back memories in this conversation and saying like what he will be thinking about and what I'm thinking about. Because what I'm thinking about in the pickup interviews is that we need a complete arc. You know what I mean? To their storyline. You know what I mean? Like I need to know like when this began, what was the change, what is the takeaway message from their storyline. So I'm thinking about those things. So on our way to get these pickups, I'm thinking about the additional questions that I need to ask. The
You're
things
just in
like
the back of the truck like this, like
exactly, like getting that. And keep in mind, like sometimes we had a translator on set with us too. So we were asking questions, he was translating, asking the. So it was yeah. It
how
My
was
boy,
big was how
my
big
boy.
was the crew? You said it was shot in 6 days.
Yeah, but let me just add this point. We
Yeah.
do that. My boy, who's an experienced documentarian, has done a feature documentary. He did, he's been on the scene a lot doing documentary. He said, because he was dumbfounded, because he was like, well, he kept trying to trip me up. Well, how were you tracking the story? I said, well, Ebony was tracking it. Well, how did you know what questions? I said, well, we wrote it down ahead of time. We prepped it every night. Blah blah blah. He kept trying to trip me up because we're not supposed to do it that well, right? But Ebony's background in terms of story, and it tripped him up in his first feature, because you get there and you can't just be emotional about it, and you just can't be like just randomly saying any question. You got to be thinking, how is this going to complete this story? Where's the arc at? And Ebony was just right on top of it the whole time. Story arc, we're missing this, and it was just like So
Well, and
if
it's trust. You guys obviously have trust with
he
one
kept saying,
another.
who
yeah,
did that? Who did that for you? Who did
yeah,
that for you? And I was like, Ebony,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
He
I
was
mean, this was my very first time being on the continent. Just keep that in mind. So I already admire Adisa before this, and he was already my brother. But doing this film together really, really solidified just how much I trust him. You know what I mean? And just how much I admired him. Like one thing that I'll say working with him is that we were working hard, but it was a great experience. We had a good time. We were still connecting. Even though we're doing interviews, but we are connecting with this community, these kids. And he was never too busy to hug a kid, bounce the ball off the kids, you know what I mean? Talk to everyone in the community. So that was a really big part of the process.
For those that are, decided that they are going to co-direct a piece together, maybe they're friends, maybe they've worked together before, but this is the first time that they are co-directing a piece. What kind of advice do you have to, establish roles and build trust?
You can do all the prep, you can do all the conversation, you can eat dinners together, you can do all that. But until you get to set, and I don't like when filmmakers usually equate it to a war, but it is, I don't want to do the war analogy, you know what I mean? But it is you against the environment, the subject matter, it's team play, it's who's got to be strong in what moments, it's how to retreat, back up. It's all that stuff that you can't even imagine is going to happen, but that's going to happen. It's going to be very confronting for you. And there's another thing that, people use that analogy, people show up how, like it could be an emergency on set, and then you just don't know how different people react to it. But for me and Ebony in particular, we'd worked together before, but I don't see that as like, even though we liked each other, I think you got to like the person. So let's just, I liked her. She's a nice person. I think I'm a nice person.
You got to vibe. You have to want to like stay in a 10-hour car ride, you
You
know?
know,
Like I
but
feel like you have to want to hang out with
you
them.
gotta
Yeah.
wanna hang out with them. You can't be ego,
No.
like, "This is my project, and,
See?
I brought you on, and you
Nope.
don't know what you can't do all that." It really is a dance.
Yeah.
But I think also we established roles,
Mhm.
not early on, really, like, in prep, but when we got to set, you can see we just kind of fell into roles.
Will be sheltered.
Like, I remember this is one instance I'll say, and we were both open to learning too, because remember, this is our first documentary. And so
Hard to believe based on how amazing it is, but yes.
thank you for that. But there was not a lot of there was some osmosis going on there. I mean, again, she had watched a lot of docs. I had watched a lot of docs, so that kind of trained us up. But I remember the first time we got to set that morning. First day it was Bento. We left at like 5 a.m. So it's morning. We want to get her opening, waking up for morning prayers, right? So we leave, we get up early that morning. It's like 5 a.m. dark, but the hotel gate is locked. We didn't anticipate that. So now we had to find the security guard. I'm like, he's supposed to be there all night. He's the sentry. He's supposed to watch it, be there. This guy's off sleeping somewhere, right? So we got to find him. So we lose 30 minutes behind that, and then, or maybe 40. And we drive, by the time we get there, the light is up. So we missed the morning kind of that opening prayer thing happening, right? Um, and then, and the natural tendency is to be in a rush. We got to get stuff. We got to get stuff. We're behind. We didn't get it. But we were calm and cool. And we had never worked. See, this is the other part about it now. We never worked together, me and Ebony, but we never worked with the DP. So we didn't know how he was going to show up. But I knew, and I've worked around enough DPs, been around enough sets, that when he pulled out that camera and set it and started lensing and shooting, I said, "Oh yeah, this guy knows what he's doing." And I remember Ebony was saying, "We should get this," and I said, "You know what? Just let him roll." Because I've been there too, where there's time to do that after he covers the scene. Don't if we get in his ear too early with a walkie, "Hey man, you're missing this, you're missing this." Now he becomes a robot for us, and now he may be second guessing his own instincts. But I saw that right on. I said, "No, no, no. Let him go. Let him go." And he ended up doing all this stuff, and he found his way back to that thought that Ebony had, and he captured it. And then once he finished it, he turned back, and we said, "Man, great work." And then it was like Ebony or me would come in and say, "Let's get this and this as a pickup." But we let him have autonomy. You know what I'm saying? It was that kind
I
of,
think that's really powerful,
yeah,
really, because I think you have to let, I feel like the DP is also a director in a sense in the
yeah.
moment, because you can't predict what's going on. And so if you try and like bottleneck them, or you're like over their shoulder the whole time, like you said, they're going to second guess it, they're going to question themselves. But documentary DPs have to have that like sixth sense, and you kind of have to trust it, and that like nonverbal, there's so much nonverbal communication that happens on a documentary set, that it is a dance. It's, you're dancing with each other. You're kind of
Mhm.
like looking for each other's eyes. But I think that's really smart, that you let him do the scene, right? And then you say, okay, let's get these things, but you don't interrupt the flow. Don't interrupt the flow.
Yeah.
No, no,
It really had a beautiful rhythm. It really becomes a dance after a while. You know what I mean? You figure out like, okay, what's going to be the momentum? But once we got there, we really got into it. And I know we've used this word already, ready, but I really think it is the theme of a good collaboration. It's trust. It really is trust.
Mhm.
And everyone came in with the same intention. It's like we are here to tell an important story. And our DP felt that way. You know what I mean? Like he was, we not gonna say what time, what he had to do to get them the shots. You know what I mean? Like he had to really trust his incredible storytelling ability. And yeah, the collaboration. And you have to like collaboration. I'm a person who just really loves to collaborate. And even though you have two directors on set, you still have to have a singular voice. So once we figure out what that rhythm was going to be like, we really, I think, were at
Mhm.
our best at
But
this.
and what made it even more intense, it does make it more intense from, and you asked the question, but we went away from it, the crew.
Oh,
So it was like a five-person crew, right? And we had a little boy doing the AC work. I mean, no, he wasn't, no, I'm sorry, second AC work with Usman. He was
we
12
want.
years old. But
Uh-huh.
but where I'm getting at is now Ebony was not just probably I would call her the main writer on the piece, but she was also an AD. She was a production manager at night, so she had to wear those hats. She would have to generate a schedule. She said, "Okay, this is the shot list for the next day." We didn't even talk about that. It was just at the night before the morning we'd have, not the shot list, but this is the schedule. This is what we need to capture.
Yeah.
Because I had been battle tested a lot on set. I'm sort of I'm ADing it now, right? I'm moving it forward, and so that we keep on track. And I'm doing sound. And so now I gotta shut down, put on the sound gear, and I gotta make sure the sound sounds good too. So it was like that's a lot. If I wouldn't recommend that for
No.
I just you have to be because you know what, can you imagine somebody throwing fireballs at you and you doing all you have to be so acclimated to that job that that stuff doesn't phase you.
Yeah,
And
even our
so
AC, he doubled as our translator.
yeah, you translator.
I feel like in the same regard though, like I think it's so tempting to be like, oh yeah, like we should have all these roles. But I feel like what makes documentaries so special is, and filmmakers in particular, you have to wear multiple hats because the truth is you wouldn't get the same material if there were 30 people in a room asking them the same
Mhm.
questions.
And when Ebony grabbed the AD, the scheduling hat, I said, "Hey, go." I didn't even wanna challenge her with it. "Oh, you okay, that's what you wanna do? Boom."
Have at it.
If I need, because then being a voice on set to AD to move things along, you have to have the personality for that. And so that's what I was doing, but I could do that, and then so we just kinda like
Play to your strengths and let
yeah,
go, really be able to let go and trust the other person.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to go back to how the film begins and ends.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about it, but I think there's a lot of people that are integrating narrative elements into documentary, whether that's through recreations or experimental things like that. Can you again describe how you bookended the film and why that was important for this film?
Yes. So first off, the poem itself was inspired by the children of Kono. Adisa, reached back out to his contacts there and had all of the kids kind of write what beauty meant to them. Because the component, like we're telling this documentary about skin bleaching, but we really wanted balance and we really wanted to also capture those who knew that they were beautiful already in their natural state. So that exercise was very spiritual. It was very beautiful. So after the kids did that, we took language from these different pieces and I craft together the poem itself. So we had that. So we had a framework of what the metaphor would be. And then I just started to think, you know what I'm saying? What it's gonna look like. So we came up with the story, like Adisa alluded to earlier, about this protagonist, this young girl kind of going through this journey of forgetting who she is. So in the first act, I always think about it in three acts. She's born, you know what I mean? Beautiful. I find it's actually Creole for beauty. And she then forgets who she is. So when she emerges from the water, that kind of signifies her taking away all of her naturalness, all of her beauty. And then she comes out in a white gown. And then it's not until the third act where she's in the cave that she's reunited with her ancestors. And for us, that's the community. People who embrace her, people who remind her who she is. So tell me, what's your name? Is that, you know what I mean? In the documentary, you have all the ancestors asking her, tell me, what is your name? What is your name? What is your name? For us, that was the symbol, that was symbolizing the affirmation needed for these young people to remember who they are. So that was the thinking behind that part. And by the end of that, she's back in the brown dress again, back in her natural state. So
But I'll also share that morphed and changed too because, just for the filmmakers, so Ebony talked about the three-act structure. So editing-wise, we tried to introduce it 3 times,
yeah.
beginning, middle, and end, but it didn't work.
Mm,
It just didn't work because it took the audience out of it. The compelling stories were there, and you can't force it. That's what I've learned about filmmaking. So in the editing process, in any of it, the beginning, the middle, the end, you don't wanna force something to the point where, like, I want this to happen. The film at some point is going to speak to you. You got to get real still and real quiet. You've seen it a lot of times. You're prepping. If you're like sort of indecisive about something, step away from it for a moment. I mean, it's hard to do that on the set, but still step away from it moment. Let the film speak to you. And when we saw in the we tried various times putting it in the middle,
And
and it
just
just took you out.
It
it.
just
It
didn't
took
work.
you out.
Yeah.
So we ended up, bookending works.
Yeah.
That structure works, and that's the thing about filmmaking too. You
Mhm.
can't really reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, you can try different things and
Yeah.
different techniques, of course, but there's some things tried and true.
Mhm.
So we knew the bookend structure just works.
Mhm.
Then it was just about playing with that. And then I could tell you some stuff like in the opening, we didn't really want to see her face. When we prepped
Okay.
it, we never saw her face in the prep. Never. Like, it was always a mystery of who she was, shooting her from behind. But then the morning when we got on set, that's where, because we had structured and planned it so well, inspiration hit. Inspiration, not desperation, but inspiration. And Antonio had the camera down at his waist, and he had shot the camera. I looked through the monitor, and the camera was of Adama looking so beautiful against the sky. And it was a low angle. And I was like, oh no. So I said, we got to shoot that. We got to shoot it. Still not knowing whether it was going to make it in the film. We didn't know, but it was like, let's capture it. But that opened the door for now. Wait a minute. Seeing her face is not a bad
Then
thing.
that deep cave shot
And
that
then
just
Ebony, we had walked into the sand dunes, and that was that deep cave. And Ebony was like, "Look at this," and we just dismissed it because it was like, at the point, well, first off, that deep cave where she's down in, it was like 200 feet down, and it was like, and that wasn't what we had intended on shooting. That I so I it was
Where was the cave?
it was a hole in the ground, is what it was. If you can imagine, like an
But this was
alien.
during the same 6 days that
it
you were
Yeah.
in.
yep.
Okay,
We
okay.
shot that in one day, and it was like,
Hmm.
it was a sand dune. It had rained the night before, so it had carved out that beautiful enclave. But when we walked in there, we had never pre-imagined that. So Ebony's like, "This is interesting down here." But I just remember me and Antonio we just dismissed it because it was like, it was interesting, but it was a hole in the ground.
Yeah, yeah.
But once we captured her face, we were like, okay, now let's find another area where maybe we can shoot her frontal. And then Ebony went back up there, and she said, look at this hole in the ground. And immediately, that second time she said it had a new meaning because of what we had captured at the front. And we didn't even say nothing. We just went to work. Antonio went down in the hole. I went down in the hole. We
We
brought
did.
Adama, the lead actress, there, and we just went to work. And it was like, and and technique for us is always in document, wide shot,
Yeah.
medium, close up.
Yeah.
And so we just went to work. We knew it was going to be wide shot, and we mediumed it. Yeah.
And I wanted to piggyback off of what Adisa was saying about, like what we intended with the narrative piece initially, but when it was supposed to be like broken down in
Mhm.
3 acts, we discovered that in our test screenings. And that's something that I really, really recommend to other filmmakers is to not just be in your own world, in your own head. You know what I mean? You really have to get feedback from other people. So we learned that it being in the middle was jarring when we got feedback from those who watched the documentary. And
How do you do a test screening?
we
Who
did
who
three.
do you send it to, and at
People
what
did it.
point in the project?
We did it immediately after our first cut. And we were intentional in who we invited. We did not want people who was just going to tell us what we wanted to hear. We wanted people who knew of us, but that would give us great feedback. And then we ended up going back to my for I think our last test screening to my university, Loyola Marymount University, and we had professors come in and they gave us feedback too to see like how they felt about certain things. So that's just something that I strongly recommend to other filmmakers is to get other people to give you feedback before you go out, with the final cut. That helps.
And for the people that you hand select, I'm sure in the beginning you're kind of careful about who to show it to, but as it gets closer to fine cut, I'm sure you have to show it to everyday people, right? Like not just filmmakers, right, that are analyzing it from every angle.
Well, when we first sent it out, it was actually to, like Alex, our editor, sent it to his mentor editor. Maybe Ebony sent it to a friend. I sent it to Mobilaji. It was just like to get that initial in close. And Mobilaji just came back with some hard notes. He was just like, because we had Ebony's voice asking the question in some scenes, because it just that's a technique that people use. You know, you can hear the voice off camera, but he came right strong back. He said, "I don't like to hear her voice. It's an American voice in an African setting." That disarmed him. But you can be in your own head about your film, so you're thinking, "Oh, that's a technique. It could work." But he said that right away. I said, "Okay, we got to cut it." So we cut her voice in one particular section where she was asking the question, and then we did the test screenings. And I remember doing the Loyola Marymount. I love test screenings. I love it because I want to feel so sure about my movie. I want to know what people are thinking. I want you to teach me about my film because, see, that's how evasive film can be. You can write it, but depending on who you're giving it to or people seeing it, they can see it through their own lens. And they have their own takeaways, you know, and you're not going to appease everybody, but you're trying to say, okay, this it has this effect. This area was slow. Everybody kind of,
Yeah.
got out of
Were
it.
you bored at any point, or
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
do you understand what's going on? Are you confused?
yeah, or you go and I remember we were gonna do the Loyola Marymount screening. We'd already done 3, and just for the filmmakers out there, it's draining. You don't really wanna be critiqued. It does hurt sometimes, your feelings get hurt. You be sitting there like, "Damn, they didn't like that. I worked so hard on that," or,
Yeah.
um,
It's
you
your
know,
baby. Yeah.
we don't get it, and, and then we argue among ourselves sometimes. You be like, "Well, let's keep it. Forget what they think," but then you just come to a reason and say, "No, there's a reason we're getting this feedback." But I remember doing Loyola Marymount, her college, and I was like, I just didn't even wanna do the 3rd screening because I was kinda tired a little bit. I thought I had a good pulse on what was happening, and that screening ended up being monumental because that's when we cut down the Bundu section. Because there was one woman in there who said, "Oh, Bundu's doing this superhero pose around womanism and blah blah blah." I was like, and that section, I saw it again. I said, "That section's too long." And then we went back to Alex and said, "Man, you got to trim that section." And he trimmed it. And then we tested some stuff. Remember, we tested the quote around the village play, and we just do
How
sometimes.
long was the editing process from like the first cut to you locked it for real?
I thought he locked picture. I thought we locked picture. We got the first cut pretty fast. It was almost like
Very
four.
good because we had a thorough outline. Our editor was
You
like,
were prepared.
he was prepared. So that was a quick turnaround.
No, and then he was shocked too because when we met with him for the first time, I've worked with Alex before on a feature, but he said, "No, it's gonna take a while. It's gonna be massaging." Because we were very optimistic we can get it done kind of quickly. Of course, we won't want to get it done quickly because the budget, and we want to try to move through this. But he, as an editor, said, "No, films need to marinate. You got to sit with them." Blah blah blah. But what we did when me and Ebony spent it was like maybe 3 days. I camped out at your place, and we wrote that outline. Like it was one thing to prep it, it was one thing to shoot it and interview and all that, but to do the outline based on what we had, not creating stuff out of hyperbole, but just like this is the footage, and we found shots for him. And it was just like wasn't it was like cut and paste. And that's how he did the first draft for us. We wasn't letting him find stuff. I mean, of course, in the course of it, he had to maybe bend the frame here, tie this together. But it was like it was very specific.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have so enjoyed this conversation, Ebony and Adisa.
Is it
I want to
over?
no, I want to wrap it up with some quick questions.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Good.
So, and you can both answer. So, what is your favorite tool that helps you thrive as a filmmaker? It could be something digital or physical, or you can interpret this however you like, but favorite tool.
This is probably weird, but this is something that I always do. I need inspiration. So I will go to museums. That's my favorite thing to do. And you wouldn't think like a piece of art would just like unlock certain things, but to me that really unlocked like the aesthetic around like what we wanted the choreo poem section like. It also music, and that's why I just want to use this opportunity to really highlight our composer Rashi. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm glad you're saying this because
yeah,
I was listening to it and I loved
Mm.
I loved it.
oh,
It really elevated everything.
it really helps to keep the vibe and the tone and the elegance of the film because this is a heavy film, but I think it's also a very elegant film. So it kind of kept the spirit for me alive. So those are weird tools that I really utilized was
No, I think it's great.
music and like art and just inspiration and having conversations with people. And I'm that person that absolutely love research. You know what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
love history. So I really enjoyed that process of like, just finding information from other documentaries and other topics and books. So just really immerse yourself with
Mhm.
information and inspiration is
Love
what
that.
I would suggest.
Love that. What about you, Adisa?
I like to say I'm an intuitive filmmaker, meaning I can feel the environment, I can feel the characters. I want to be intuitive. And I want to use my intuition. But the way I do it, because I've tried it the other way before, where it was like I didn't prep and I get to set and you're waiting for inspiration to hit you. You're like, oh, hit me. I need it right now. I need something because this ain't working, or I need it. I need inspiration. It doesn't work like that. So I prep, 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 prep. I sit with it. I over prep. I rethink it. I'll do a shot list and I'll redo the shot list. I'll rewrite it. I'll over prep so much and prep so much and be so prepared that when I get there, I can dance. When I get there, if I
So what's
need,
your favorite prep tool? Do you do this on your
oh,
like phone or like document written? Like what do you
you know what? Okay, so I'm old school. I'm Spike Lee. I go back to that era. I'm old school. I use my brain. I just, if I had to be real, I just use it, and I use, yeah. I mean, I may,
pen and paper?
well, I'll be at the gym, and then like I would call Ebony from the gym sometimes. Oh, the kids, we gotta have them wearing this and this and this, and she'd be like, "Yo, well, I'll write." So I'll use my iPhone and my notes, and if it hits me inspiration at any, I stop, I freeze, because I know how valuable and how rich and how beautiful that is. Like that's gonna be the gym for me. It's all about, it could be, so other people could use the word God or the universe, but it's always about tapping in, being in alignment, being a conduit, right? So I never know when that's gonna hit. If I could
Yeah.
be
You got to be
sleeping,
ready. You got to write it down.
I'll be sleeping, I'll turn over, oh, I got it. And my notepad.
I love it.
And then I'll compile it later. So if, yeah, my notes on
Notes.
my on
Notes in your brain. Notes in your
no,
brain. That's a
or
good one.
notes on my, no, I write it down, but it's notes on my iPhone.
Yes, yes. And here's another question. Philosophy or catchphrase that gets you through the tough times? Do you have something that you say to yourself recently that, when you're having a tough day, it helps you out?
Well, this was something that I was told since I was a little girl, and it has always, I guess, rang true for me. Your gifts will make room. Your gifts
Mm,
will make room. And I think that this documentary and this experience is proof of that. Like, we really just came in here just like passionate about it. We
mhm.
didn't wait on anyone. We didn't have all these great resources, but just our God-given gifts and our passion really, like, I can't, you met us at the premiere, and just this whole journey from where we are now is just so incredible. So that's something that I write it down on my little sticky note, and I just remind myself that.
Your gifts will make room. I like that. What
And
about you,
that journey,
Adisa?
and I just want to tag on that journey where we are now is us being Oscar qualified to submit for the 1924, or sorry, 2024 Oscar race. I just want to add that because, yeah, that's,
That's huge. That's
yeah.
huge.
And
Big
if I
congratulations.
had to be completely honest, and I'll answer because I want to answer the question too about the question, but if I had to be completely honest, Ebony named and claimed it day one. I want to do an Oscar qualified, nominate. We didn't know the steps to get there. We were naive at times, thinking we could just apply right away. We didn't have to go through festivals. That's just how gullible we were at times, But day one, she set the bar so high in terms of Oscar qualifying, Oscar nominate. This is the stage I want to be on, and I want the work to be revered on that level. So, and we use that as our bar. So when we interviewed our DP, if they weren't talking Oscar qualified, or if they didn't even believe it, because sometimes we would say it, and if you had an adverse like a flinch, we was like, no, that ain't the right person. You had to be like right in alignment, and so when we said Oscar, you had to say when. Oscar today, Oscar 2024. That was our language. That wasn't that the language?
Yeah.
And
So
we,
first conversation.
And now you're here. Now you're here. That's amazing.
what was your
Okay,
question about?
so
Oh, the
what's a
catchphrase.
philosophy or a catchphrase that gets you through tough times?
So for me, it's you're gonna laugh. It's manure. It's the manure, yeah, because for me, I I don't look at the bad times as bad times. My favorite word in the dictionary is transformation, transmutation. And so I'm looking at manure or shit as like, okay, what can grow out of this? This ain't really manure. It's really just a perspective on what you, if you see manure, then you're gonna see manure. But other people see opportunity, growth, possibility. So if it's about the rain, I'm like, okay, well, how do we incorporate this into the movie?
I love that. Manure. Wow.
I mean,
Manure.
I just came up with it, but it's like,
I love it. I
but
love it.
there were times we got in the cave. Remember we got in the cave, it started raining?
Started raining. We adjusted.
You got to do with it. You got to do with it. You got
I'm
to be
like, okay.
adaptable.
Yeah.
Okay, and lastly, what is a favorite doc that you've seen recently?
Oh, that's so hard. The last documentary I watched, this is not new, but it was Last Dance. I just rewatched that one. My
Mhm.
favorite documentary of all time is Black Kids, Black Ain't by Marlon Riggs.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm like Ebony in the way that I almost love documentaries more than I do. I'm not
I
gonna say this.
love
Come to the doc side. Why not?
I know,
Stay
right?
stay a
Um,
while. Stay a while.
but there's some docs that stay with me. Like I like one of my favorite documentarian filmmakers is Raoul Peck, right? So he did I'm Not Your Negro. He's so cold-blooded with the truth. I mean, he's so cold-blooded with the truth. But the stylistic documentarians I like, the stylistic one is Alan Hughes, who just did Dear Mama, right? The Tupac doc. And before that, he did the Defiant ones on Jimmy Iovine and style. I mean, style. Because so for us, I think we wanted to impose style. That's I get influenced like that too. So I don't want it to just be a raw. Let me just throw the camera up. It's always going to be intentional. It's always going to be that sense of like, how can we play with the medium, if you will? But those, yeah.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast. I had so much fun. Thank you.
We had a blast. Thank
Well,
you.
listen, you should invite us back for part two after we win.
The Oscars.
You said it. You said it.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. If you enjoyed this, if you had some fun listening to this, found something useful, please give us a review. It would mean the world to us as we are trying to grow this podcasting community. Just do it. Also, if you love talking docs, join our weekly Discord Wednesdays at 5 p.m. PST, where we discuss a doc of the week and check in with each other. Talk soon.